I will call this meeting to order this is our third Thursday of April the 15th, 2021. And will the vice chair please call roll?
Sure. Joe Winnia.
Here.
Rodney Cox here. John Arnold. Absent. Andrew Manley.
Here.
Ryan Conway. Absent. Lily Kleinlein has already said she'd be absent. Lauren Cott. Absent. Nelson Schaefer. Absent. Paul White. Absent. Morning Wilder.
Here.
Right, well, we do not have quorum, so we will, I think, forego adoption of the agenda, though I will note that I made an updated copy in the version that's on Drive that just contains, Dropbox version is for the version that's on Dropbox that contains the remaining 5-year plan topics in detail, since I had only put them in the message body of the email and not in the agenda itself. So that's now present there if you're following along in that version. We will not be able to approve meeting minutes, which is unfortunate, but we will be able to get the report from the district. Tom, if you're able to do that.
Yeah, I can. Well, as we kind of talked to before we convene the meeting, that I have executive session of the board to jump off on here shortly, and that is to hopefully get a decision by the board to make an offer to a candidate on our controller position. So hopefully here in the near future, we will have our new controller in place and get Connie transferred over and get staffing in the office where it needs to be and moving forward. So excited about that. I hope we have a quorum for that meeting, but
that'd be more important.
The other, we are the compost bin and rain barrel sales that we've been doing online. Those are to be given away, scheduled to be given away this Saturday and next Saturday. We are still hopeful that's going to happen. We've had a issue with the delivery, but they have promised that they will be here by 7 a.m. Saturday morning, so we can get them unloaded and get the portion over to Switchyard Park that need to be over there for distribution. So we're crossing our fingers on that. Other than that, plugging away at the plan update, piecing things together. I have not had a chance to read through it all. I did get a revised version of the demographic study from the capstone class that did have the additional demographic category breakdown that I'd asked for. Has some nice charts and graphs in it, and so it all looked good, but I've not read through that yet, but I think that's going to be what we need. The survey is, I guess it's live. The link's not out there for the world to see yet, but the survey is live. We've been doing some test runs on it, and everything does seem to be working right. So we hope tomorrow or Monday we'll be able to get that link posted on the website, Facebook pages, stuff like that, and start getting people taking that survey. Professor Waldman from the capstone class put not a real hard, but a deadline of May the 30th. I don't know that we would take it down at that point, but that's kind of as late as he felt he could go for the capstone class to be able to do any part of the tracking and tabulating of the results of the survey. So that's where that's it. And I think that's all. I think all that I have right now.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions? I did want to ask if the rain barrel and composter delivery delay has any potential for being postponed indefinitely. You said you were concerned about getting that in on time, or is it just for the order pickup commitment?
No, not postponed indefinitely. It was originally supposed to be delivered yesterday, but they do come out of Canada, and commerce is supposed to be able to cross the border, but there are, the border crossings aren't real quick and easy like they used to be. But he did get it. What we were told was he got across the border. And then I don't know where, but apparently there was an accident. He wasn't in the accident, but got behind the accident and caught in traffic and was not going to make it here by 5 o'clock yesterday. So I guess instead of stopping and waiting, he went home, and now they're having to get things on a different truck and get them down here. That's the explanation that we're getting. But we've been told they will be here by Saturday morning. We're planning on that, and if they don't make it, we'll let people know as quick and as best as we can. We do have contact information for the people that have ordered them, and if for some reason it doesn't happen, I see no reason why they wouldn't come in next week, and we would do the following Saturday as scheduled, and then either the Saturday after that, or make arrangements individually with those people that couldn't pick up that following Saturday to get them to them.
Great, thank you.
Joe, you probably noticed it looks like we may have quorum now.
Yeah, so I think, Tom, is this your point for departure?
Yeah, I'm going to jump off here, and like I said, if it goes quickly like I hope and assume it will, I'll be back in 15-20 minutes.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes. So also with Tom's departure, I think it'd be a good time to acknowledge the new arrivals. I believe we have Ryan Conway on the line.
And then I think we lost John. He's been
Okay.
on and off a couple times now, so he may be having some connectivity issues or something.
Okay.
Almost.
Right. I think I'll proceed with the chair report in the meantime. Hopefully we'll be able to have quorum at some point during the meeting and be able to get minutes approved. There is not much to say from my end. I just wanted to mention that I have unfortunately not been able to maintain the schedule that was laid out for completing the subcommittee discussions, but am going to strive to wrap those up over the next week to try to align with the conclusion of the final disposal facilities subcommittee activities so that the drafting can proceed as scheduled. Any questions there?
You just said something about the final disposal committees. I had a cutout. Could you repeat that?
Oh, yes. I was just going to try to wrap up the outstanding items for the other subcommittees so that their conclusions will still align with the conclusion of the final disposal subcommittee, because that was the last one scheduled to conclude in the subcommittee's timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so next that will bring us to reports on special committees. I will cover that for the education subcommittee meeting, and just have a few points that there was discussion on the role of social media influences and how to best disseminate information, particularly educational information. There was a follow-up from Ms. Pocrell on the costs associated with certain media and QR code services, and then also that the Bloomington Board of Realtors Welcome Wagon program for new resident arrivals is apparently defunct and hasn't been replaced. So Mr. McClassen noted that current district leaflet info leaflet supplies are low and would like to wait on reprinting them until the 5-year goals can be incorporated, and that it would be sufficient to make use of digital copies in the interim time. Winnie expressed interest in revising the district branding to move away from the going green language and using a more responsibility-based language. And I'll note that during the last board meeting, board member Piedmont Smith also expressed interest and support in this shift. And then there was also a suggestion of possibly enlisting IU Media School assistance for assistance with the visual design aspect of a district branding change. So that is it for the education subcommittee. Any questions there?
When you say shift away from the Go Green messaging or the greening messaging, is that including like the whole brand is sort of centered around like the Go Green district, like website and logos and whatnot. You're saying you'd like to see a rebranding?
Yeah, at the very least, it would at least be a shift in language, or at least language around the branding. And then potentially, yeah, a full rebranding of logo and domain as well, to
Okay.
be continued in discussion.
Another question, was the website discussed also in any depth besides just the rebranding?
It was not. So far, there hasn't been any new conversation around website activities.
Okay.
Is anybody else having trouble staying connected? It keeps cutting out on me.
No, so far from everyone that's been in the meeting hasn't been having connectivity issues, but I've seen you've been joining and departing.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It keeps cutting out on me.
Okay. Well, has it been stable for a little bit?
It wasn't good this afternoon trying to work because it kept cutting out when I was logging into work too. So I don't know. There must be something wrong somewhere. So I'll just
Okay.
do the best I can and to stay on.
Okay. I think that perhaps while we have you, it looks like that would bring our attendance to a quorum of 6. And if we can revert from the subcommittee meeting updates to the approval of the meeting minutes, I think that would be prudent. The minutes and I do it because there were minutes for the January 14 joint meeting with the board, as well as the March 18 CAC meeting that were distributed by email on Tuesday, April 13th. And because the January 14 meeting is rather outstanding, I wanted to first see if there are any corrections to that meeting as it was provided in the email and posted on Dropbox. All right. I will note briefly that I made corrections in Dropbox for that meeting. The only one that was substantive was on page 1, where it remarks that Winey has stated that some demographic forecasts are available through IU. And it wasn't actually through IU, it's through Stats Indiana. And I posted the Stats Indiana link to that as well. And then there were 3 more grammar or lexicographic matters that I made comments on. In one case, date, or the word data appeared to be written as date. There was a repeated clause in one sentence, and then a missing verb and article in another sentence. So those are the corrections that I have. And if there are no further corrections, is there any objection to adopting the January 14 joint meeting minutes as corrected? All right, seeing none, those are approved. And second is the March 18th CAC regular meeting minutes distributed in the same message, also available on Dropbox. Are there any corrections? All right, seeing none, those minutes are approved as well. Thank you, everyone. And I will also take the opportunity for those who are present via video. I will share my screen with the current agenda. And for those who are not present via video, it was distributed also by the same email. And is there any opposition to adopting the agenda as distributed and shown in the screen share? Okay, very good. So we will continue with the agenda as distributed. We will resume where we interjected with the reports, and the next report to address is the final disposal facilities.
Thank you, Joe. Joe asked me to chair the final disposal facilities subcommittee meeting. We decided at the last meeting that it would be a singular meeting. So we only met one time. Our conversation really focused on the Monroe County landfill and what's the best use of that land now that it's in post-closure. Can we maybe create a park there? Can we facilitate landfill tours to sort of bring an educational component with the landfill? People can see the impact it has on the environment, maybe have like a history of the landfill or landfills in general. So one recommended inclusion into the plan that we discussed was a statement to the tune of explore recreational and educational opportunity options for the closed landfill. Like I said, that could be landfill tours, walking path, landfill education history trail, something I sort of brainstormed with Ryan and Tom. Additionally, after some extra investigation and sort of looking at it on the GIS, Monroe County GIS, I discovered that approximately 110 acres south of Anderson Road that is owned by the district or the county is forested land or farmed land. So that's 110 acres that, to my knowledge, there's no restrictions for development or use from IDEM for the post-closure of the landfill. So that's a lot of potential for open green space. And I think that is something that we could explore recreationally in the plan. In the original 92 plan, one of the objectives, not explicitly stated, but it said that continued environmentally safe, go down to my notes here. It was to provide a safe final disposal site for non-recyclable materials. While the Monroe County does not currently have a final disposal facility, I think it's good to note, while it's not open, we should say continued environmentally safe post-closure management of the Monroe County landfill. There are requirements in the post-closure process that Monroe County still has to keep, such as, let's see here. So there are 12 to 13 years in the post-closure. There hasn't been any major compliance issues, but there are general maintenance of erosion controls, mowing, piping for leachate, pumping leachate and disposing of that properly, as well as groundwater monitoring analysis. So there is still a lot of activity there that you can't just leave it in place and ignore it. So continued operations is one thing we wanted to highlight. And then also I considered, we considered a deliverable for the plan, which would be a table with projected landfill capacities for all the current landfills that Monroe County Waste goes to, and consider potentially the Rumpke facilities that will sort of shift the waste, the final disposal of waste to different facilities once and if that is approved. So I'd like to potentially see a table sort of demonstrating that our projected waste for Monroe County in the future will be matched by the capacities of the landfills that we currently and anticipate to dispose at. Let's see. We also discussed exploring ways to make the landfill profitable. One way to do that is methane capture, but unfortunately, that does not seem to be economically profitable or feasible at this moment. It's sort of down the line. It was closed early for one, and also it's I think 12 years past its post-closure period, so the peak of methane gas is already passed. We did discuss maybe allowing local composting or mulching companies to use some of the buffer area as for their operations, because there are water control measures on site, which is one of the requirements of a composting operation. And then finally, we talked about metrics, putting an emphasis on what we're taking away from the waste stream rather than what's measuring what's being disposed of. The original plan called for a reduction of volume of waste going to final disposal by at least 50% by 2001. I don't necessarily think, or we kind of agreed that we don't necessarily need to be making a statement like that, because it's, number one, not entirely measurable because of the private haulers. And number two, it's sort of an unrealistic goal, I think. It's much easier and much more better to measure progress with goals that measure what's being taken away. Other than that, Ryan, did you have any input on our discussion?
You.
Well, that's I think that's everything.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the details. Are there any questions on that report?
Was there any talk about periodically assessing the feasibility of reopening the landfill?
So that was something that was briefly brought up, and that is an option that we could recommend. As a group, we could recommend not only reopening the closed landfill, because I think it still does have quite a bit of capacity. We could also discuss siting a whole new landfill. However, given the a new municipal solid waste landfill in Indiana has not been permitted in over 10 years, a new one. Reopening, I'm not too sure on. I figured it was, if that's a discussion that we would like to have, then I think that's fine, but I sort of dismissed those offhand, just because of, I think that would be quite controversial.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Also have a question for you, Andrew. You had referenced 110 acres south of Anderson Road that are owned by the county and forested or farmed. Does that make up some of what is defined as the landfill designated area, or is that unrelated land?
Considering there's a road crossing, I don't have access to my former IDEM resources. We had an internally used map that shows old open dumps that, that exist that we can't necessarily remediate. I'm not sure on the history on that part, but because this research was sort of done post de facto, but I'm sure Tom or Lee might have some insight on restrictions on that land. But just doing some GIS research, I didn't see any sort of environmentally or environment restricted covenants on those. So I think there's a lot of potential if there are no use restrictions on that 110 acres.
Sorry, and had you said earlier that the county or the district owns that property, or?
That's correct. And I'm happy to forward a sort of a map showing the parcels that the county owns, an aerial map, after the meeting, if you'd like.
I think that would be nice. Go ahead. Morning.
I'd like to see it.
Is the farmland currently being farmed, like being leased and farmed, or is it laying fallow right now?
That's actually a question I was going to have for Tom or Lee. Just looking at Google Maps, it looks like it might be used for hay production. I think it's approximately 22 acres of farmland. And then 88 acres approximately that is wooded, or what appears from aerials to be former fields that are being allowed to grow up with trees and shrubs.
Okay.
And then just to confirm, any recreational activity would take place not on the designated landfill space itself, but the area adjacent to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, the area entirely south of Anderson Road. However, there is a buffer zone around the landfill itself, which obviously there'd be issues with access control. But you know, maybe a short walking path with signs educating those on landfills and whatnot.
Excellent. I do really like that idea as well. Thank you. Any further questions? All right, thank you again. We are able to move on to the next item on the agenda. We have no special orders for this meeting, no unfinished business, so we can go on to new business, opening with the SPIA X 5511, the City of Bloomington proposed reusable container program update from Andrew.
Yeah, and I don't know what's happening, but recently I've sort of been the point person. All these students at SPIA are contacting me about projects, and one of them was the reusable takeout container study group under Professor Shazin Atari. I facilitated them meeting with Lee Paulson, who actually I think took them on a tour of the landfill, and I also provided them our reports, the both the waste audits and the food organics report as well. And I think they used some of the materials in that in their project. However, they also spoke with a health inspector who shut down the project. Apparently there's, and I wouldn't necessarily, it was a project, it was more of a feasibility study. And I guess the determination of the study is that it's not feasible due to current health standards, unfortunately. So I might see about getting that final report from those students to share with the board so we can get some more context on that. Additionally, there was another SPIA group that recently contacted me concerning a study of student recycling rates and accessibility in the community, which I think is one thing that in our plan we were wanting to capture and study. They were distributing a survey amongst students that I might try to get my hands on, because I think the data that they receive on that may be insightful for what we're doing here.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that information as well. Are there any questions on that?
I guess I'm wondering what exactly their feasibility study included that was shut down by the health inspector or health department. And we don't have to get into it, but I'm curious, you know, some places have, you know, deposits for containers. So I wonder if, you know, if there was to be some kind of deposit for a container return, if that would mitigate whatever issues of cleanliness the health department brought up, or something like that. So I'd be interested to hear more about that if you learn more about it, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask my my friends or my peers and get back to you on that. And hopefully by our next meeting, school will be done, so their report should be finalized, and I can share that with you all as well if they're willing to share it.
Cool.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Andrew. I think the group is definitely interested in receiving that information when it's available. Appreciate that follow-up. The next new item we have is CAC general consensus on the 5-year plan discussions as they've progressed so far. It looks like we have present predominantly subcommittee members who have participated in all of these sessions, but I will still leave the question open if there's any general feedback on progress thus far. I'll open up the floor to anybody who has any thoughts.
I looked at the waste reduction working document, I think it was a couple days ago, and I was unable to attend that last waste reduction meeting, but I would just like to say that I think that you all during that meeting have made some great progress, especially getting the goals written out. So good job. And I contributed a comment. Ryan, I think you were the one that made that comment, but I did respond to it about 14 days late. But yeah, I look forward to helping finalize some of these goals and objectives and recommendations. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we will proceed to our last listed new business item, which is the remaining 5-year plan topics that have not been discussed in subcommittee meeting activities, which I will read through now for reference, are Indiana Code Section 1321 5-13 under required contents of the plan. 2 items that have not been discussed yet are designating a person to supervise the implementation of the district plan and describe the responsibilities and authority of that person. And then item 6 is describe the surveillance and enforcement procedures to be implemented to ensure compliance with district plan. Now may be a good opportunity to also provide that on the shared screen so that anybody can reference that writing instead of remembering my reading. And is it clear and visible for everyone? Great. So the second part of that, the second set of items to discuss for the 5-year plan are is section 1321 5-14, the next section, which is disposal of certain waste materials required by the plan. And it states that a district plan must also include provisions for the management and disposal of the following materials for the term of the plan. 1, waste tires. 2, household hazardous waste. 3, used oil. 4, white goods. 5, other classifications of waste provided for in the state plan, which to my understanding, according to the board, does not exist. So the first 4 items are of more interest. So that said, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that I think that not only the 92 plan, which obviously is very outdated, but sort of the website as well has a list. And I think one of the reports, I think maybe the RWR need request memo from September 23rd, 2020, that was put in the Dropbox by Tom, I think 2 meetings ago. Basically all of those have a compilation of the solid waste management, I want to say infrastructure in the county. All of the private businesses, the private haulers, those that take battery recycling, those that take household hazardous wastes, not just the district's South Walnut facility, but more specialized wastes, which I'm spacing on what could be right now, but recyclers for white goods and whatnot. I think most of that information is there for a comprehensive list. And that's sort of how I interpret that that section, is just providing a comprehensive list of the people that manage those types of wastes. Am I wrong in that observation?
I don't disagree. I'm just rereading it now to verify. It says it must also include provisions for the management plan and disposal of the following materials for the term of the plan. That seems like it would be sufficient from my understanding as well, open to others' interpretations, but I don't think the district itself has to necessarily be responsible for these things so much as providing the means of connecting to those who are providing those services.
The waste tires is easy because that's a registered operation by IDEM. So a full accounting of waste tire managers is quite easy to get from the state's website, I'll add.
That's good to know. I know that was the one item that Tom had mentioned is one of the problem waste items in the past that, and I don't believe the district receives or processes waste tires. Is that correct?
Well, I believe the district has a waste tire transporter registration, but I'm not too familiar with the operations and managements of those.
Maybe able to verify that with Tom when he joins the meeting. Because the district does already accept household hazardous waste, number 2, and I believe, but we need to verify that includes used oil. Does anyone have that? Maybe I'll also wait for Tom. It looks like he's available.
Yes, you can bring used oil to the South Walnut Center.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, what? I'm sorry. I'm off the phone now.
Hi, Tom. Welcome back.
Can you take used motor oil to places other than South Walnut?
All the
Others?
facilities, all of our recycling centers will accept used oil.
Thanks.
And then what service does the district provide for waste tires,
None.
if any? Okay.
Don't you have a registration though, Tom? Or is that like an old?
We do, but that is for us. I mean, because there's not a good option for waste tires in the county, we go collect them off the side of the road all the time. So we have a hauling permit. We have a transport. We have a waste tire transporter registration, and that's just because we can, we haul large quantities of tires sometimes, and we just we have a semi-trailer at the landfill we store them in, and have a company out in Indianapolis that once we have a couple hundred of them, they come get them.
Okay.
We pay to get rid of them, but we have. I mean, while you're on it, we have talked about. I'd like to see it happen sooner than later. We need to have some space logistic issues at South Walnut to figure out, but I'd like to move that trailer down to South Walnut, and then that would put us in a position to start accepting them. It would, there'd probably have to be fees for it because of the cost on the back end. But if we can get something set up at South Walnut, because there we have the ability to transact money because of the electronic fees that we have, and so that would put us in a position to start a waste tire program.
I would note, I believe the trailer encompasses the transporter, but if you were to take the tires out of the trailer, then you would require a waste tire storage registration. And if you decide to quarter them or shred them on site, which I doubt you will, that would require a waste tire processing registration.
Well, the last I looked, you had to have 1,000 tires to be a storage facility, and we would never have that many on site.
You're right. You're right.
And I did want to ask along those lines then, Tom, as per section of the Indiana Code 1321.5-14, it says a district plan must also include provisions for the management and disposal of the following materials. As it stands now, does that put the district out of terms for the requirements of the client?
Well, I guess, and I'll apologize because I don't have it handy. That would depend on how that was addressed in the original plan.
Oh, okay. So in terms of going forward with the new plan, would it be sufficient to say that the district, or what would be required then in terms of waste tire management as specified by the code for the district's role?
Well, and that's how you would phrase this in a plan. I don't know. I mean, because that's part of the complication we have in doing stuff like this is there's and I forget the exact citation. There's that section of code that prohibits us from going into direct competition with the private sector. So we're going to have to go through a public process, to make sure that there's none of the local auto shops or tire shops would cry foul if we went and did this. I mean, because I know that, I mean, if you go buy tires at Pomp's Tires, because that's right by our office, they take the 4 tires they took off your car and they charge you $5 or $10 a piece as a disposal fee for those 4 tires. And so but they won't do that for you if you're not buying tires from them. So there's some legal logistics to work out with regard to, how we would move forward with such a thing. And so for the purposes of the plan, it was something to the effect of providing for or partnering with to ensure that there's adequate capabilities to properly manage waste tires in the county or something to that effect.
Okay. So it wouldn't need to necessarily be the responsibility of the district to manage them, such as coordinating or ensuring that proper management methods exist.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that we could partner with somebody like a Pomp's Tire or Tire Barn, and have them accept them from people, even if they're not buying tires, and then, give a report to us with a number and where the district would cover the fee for those tires not related to purchases from the shop. That would be a possibility.
Okay. That sounds like a practical and prudent one. And then is that the case for white goods as well? Or does the district actually process those?
Most white goods we accept as scrap metal currently.
Okay. That would definitely suffice for the management and disposal of the following materials as white goods. Okay. And then in a previous, I think it was the joint CAC board meeting, it was remarked by board members that other classifications of waste provided for in the state plan. The state plan, is there a state solid waste management plan that exists, or was that lost in the wayside?
My inquiries and my research says that there is no written state plan.
Okay. Just wanted to confirm that as far as to the extent of your understanding.
And again, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. There's part of the statute that covers what the state solid waste management plan should be, and I believe there are some specific waste classifications identified in that statute.
Okay. So while there may not be an actual state plan, the statute may contain these classifications?
Yes.
Okay. That will require investigation then.
My vodka's gone. Is the meeting over?
I would say yes if that were the case. At least it would be over for you.
In case anybody wasn't watching earlier and I jumped back on, it was water. We were joking about that earlier.
I forgot about that important bit of context for those who joined later. Okay, well, the good thing is I think that covers everything that we need to know, at least in the big picture, for the second item, section 14 of the Indiana Code.
Could I mention, Joe?
Yes, please, go ahead, Rondi.
I did see in the 92 plan that there is a whole section on tires, on waste tires.
Excellent.
And it talked about fees assessed for them and the districts wanting to have a way to collect them. So, I mean, I couldn't read through all of it, but there is a whole section. It's page 105, I think is where it starts in the plan.
Is it the plan page number or not the PDF number?
Is it the what? Sorry.
Sorry, there's a difference between the PDF page number and the actual plans
sorry.
marked.
Not the PDF one. It's actually says page 105 on the bottom of it.
Perfect, thank you.
I guess it's page 129 of the PDF if that helps.
Got it. All right. Would it be prudent to generate one more shared document for these subjects in the collaborative workspace for exchanges on these topics that will proceed beyond the duration of this meeting? Any thoughts on that subject? And I ask because there are 10 minutes remaining for a regularly scheduled meeting, and there is section 13 for the required contents of the plan. And while I do think that we covered the vast majority of section 14, there may be a couple of finer points in terms of how we want to proceed with handling waste tires as an example. It just seems like that might be a good option for having a communication space for that if members are open. But if not, I'm open to alternative suggestions.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
And then will we spend the last 10 minutes in discussion with the other point we need to address?
Correct, yes. So
Sure.
with that decided, we can close the section 14 discussion and then proceed to section 13, which is about designating a supervision for the implementation of the plan and surveillance and enforcement procedures to ensure compliance with the plan. And one thing worth mentioning for those who weren't in the subcommittee meetings or haven't read the documentation produced from them is that there was discussion of having a staffed position within the district for execution of 5-year management, or I guess general management plan objectives. And if that did indeed happen, I think that would be the clear additional responsibility of said staffed person for supervising the implementation, and then surveillance, I don't know how that would be described, but enforcement seems like it would require some discussion in terms of the authority that that potential staff person would have for enforcing the plan. But I'd mention that as one potential option, and if that is not the case, there would need to be an alternative to a staffed person for points 5 and 6 of section 13. I'll open the floor to suggestions if there are any, or thoughts.
Joe, I remember talking about an additional person for education, and maybe I'm getting mixed up, or maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly. So I'm wondering if there have been suggested 2 new positions or just 1 new position, and the additional education component would also, the person would do education as well as kind of overseeing management of the plan, or would those be separate things?
That's an excellent question, and I think open for discussion now. I unfortunately can't remember the exact context, and I know it wasn't a very long conversation about that potential staff position, but it would seem, in my personal opinion, fitting to have one person covering the spectrum of the management plan, including the education, but it may be worthwhile to see what the more final plan looks like in its draft form to see if that would be a reasonable amount of responsibility for a single position, or if it would require a second.
I'm thinking about some of the current staff we have there: Lee Paulson, Mary Beth, Elisa. Wouldn't these plan implementation responsibilities fall within their purview, but at the same time, it wouldn't necessarily involve additional responsibilities? I don't think, or very many. I guess it depends on the commitment to actually the actual objectives outlined in the plan, but I would think that many of the responsibilities are already assigned to the existing staff.
I will note that section 5 says designated person to supervise the implementation of the district plan. That seems like it would be at least a single individual for the spectrum of plan activities. Does that sound accurate?
I mean, I think that, I think Andrew's on the right track, and I think that the person, you're gonna see the board look to the executive director to be that person. with the various components of the plan, like Andrew said, are pretty much already being carried out by a variety of staff members who all report to the executive director.
That's not to say I think it's a good idea to potentially bring on new staff member or two. And I think it's within the CAC's purview to recommend that. However, I suppose somewhat of the budgetary constraints of the district, I don't know if the board of directors would be behind that or not. Has that discussion been had with the board of directors, or I suppose our April 29th meeting, we can bring it up?
Yeah, I haven't had any specific discussions with the board, I guess, at a meeting or individually off to the side about, the things that have been discussed at the CAC meeting. Specifically, the thought of bringing on, additional person that would have some education and outreach responsibilities. And I think I told the CAC at that time that, for what we're doing now, worrying about budget constraints and stuff, I don't think that's what we want to do. We want to, the board, staff, we want you guys to put your best effort forward and what you think is the best way to move the district forward. And then when it comes time to put it all together and start putting the plan together and weeding out what's, what we're prioritizing, and, then the board will consider the budget constraints, and, and some things may, fall out and not be included in the plan because of budget issues. But I think what they want right now is, is the CAC's best effort to move the district forward. And if for, whether it's financial, logistics, if for whatever reason, some of those things aren't possible for us to do at this time, we'll figure that out as we put the final plan together for the board to adopt.
Makes sense. Thank you. And is it too early to put in an application?
For what? Oh,
The position that
we
doesn't
always
exist yet.
accept applications, even if we don't have positions open. We keep them on file.
So it makes sense to me to have the director as the person overseeing it, unless it would be, too much extra work. But it seems like the director would be the, most reasonable person if no new staff were added for that specific purpose. That's my thought on that.
Well, I think that's from the board's perspective, part of the director's responsibilities are moving the district forward with regard to its goals and objectives. And that's what the plan's about.
Does that mean the CAC should also describe the responsibilities of the director within that role? That seems apparent.
I mean, that's basically the job description, isn't
right? Yeah. Okay. And then that does bring us to within 2 minutes of our scheduled end time. Is there opposition to continuing for an additional 5 minutes to discuss the final point to, I think, what would lead to a good stopping point? All right, consensus, Jen. Excellent, thank you. So describing the surveillance and enforcement procedures to be implemented to ensure compliance with the district plan. Are there any thoughts on that subject?
I think there should be a note in there about extra government partners like the Monroe County Health Department, which I believe has a local permit for waste haulers, but also include the current district staff. And then I'm sure the city of Bloomington also has permitting programs, or enforcement programs. So considering all of these persons as partners in the implementation of the plan, or just solid waste management in general.
Interesting. I understand your interpretation to be the district enforcing its plan components to the public, and I had interpreted it as enforcement of the district executing its plan.
I was with you, Joe, in your interpretation, and I was thinking more if we needed to make a recommendation for how often the director and the board should discuss how their actions are aligning with the plan, or.
I may have misinterpreted. Apologies.
No, I think it's open to either, and I'm glad that you made that remark because I just had been looking at it more narrowly, and there is that component as well. Go ahead, Morning.
Yeah, and I would say, I guess I was kind of in line with Joe and Rondi on that, and along those lines, we refer back to statements I think that some CAC members as well as some board members have made before about having in the plan, measurable objectives and goals, and so, if we're going to have things in there that can be measured, part of that process would be reporting on the progress toward those goals.
The idea of enforcement does seem complex to me.
I mean, the word enforcement, and I see where Andrew went, and where that word took him, and I get it. And he's right that the county permits the haulers, the county permits the facilities. The city has its own through the hand department, some ordinances, regarding, how long waste can sit at the curb and waste accumulation around the property.
I suppose that could be somewhere else in the plan, just an accounting of the apparatus that we have for solid waste management enforcement in the community as a whole. That could go maybe somewhere else or in this section, depending on interpretation.
Some of that could even be in each individual section with regard, depending on what the goal or the objective is. How are you going to measure and enforce how well you're doing toward achieving that goal, or measure how well you're doing, and then what kind of enforcement are you going to do to ensure that within the county there's compliance with that goal and objective. It's kind of like the county has an illegal dumping ordinance that we're tasked with enforcing.
All right, I think that brings us at least to a point where I can translate that content into a shared document where further consideration and comments can be made going forward, even in the early drafting stages. I think if everyone has the opportunity to take a look at it in a week or two, or really any time before the draft is in its first full form, we'd be able to make those additions. So with that, I do see that we have no members of the public present, so we will proceed through public comment. And I did add to this agenda for the first time the good of the order section. For those who are unfamiliar, it's just an opportunity to make comments or observations about the organization and its work, if anyone has any. So I thought I would try that out, see if anybody has anything to mention for the good of the order.
Maybe just a reminder about the Adopter Road cleanup this Saturday.
We actually have a reminder section following this. But that's a good one, thank you.
Yeah, that's from 9 to 12, meeting at the South Kroger parking by the Wendy's.
Well, I will take advantage of a good of the order item to to let you all know that while I was absent from your meeting, the board did vote to offer a controller position to Kathy Martin, who was one of the 57 applicants for the position. We will, I will reach out to her tomorrow with that offer. I have no reason to expect that she won't accept, and we should have a controller.
Good to hear. Thank you, Tom. Any other goods? So if not, I will add, I'll repeat Randy's reminder, this Saturday, the 17th, a couple days from now, is our Adopt a Road cleanup together. The next item we have is the joint CAC board meeting, which is Thursday, April 29 at 4 p.m. And then lastly, our next regular meeting will be Thursday, May 20th at 5:15 via Zoom. So if there is no objection, this meeting will adjourn. And seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.